This video demonstrates the practice of using the Dimension Style Manager to change the properties of dimensions. Sometimes the base settings or the default settings in AutoCAD for dimension styles don't always work with your drawings. The most common instance for us is when we start drawing parts that are dimensioned in the metric system. You see here that I've got two dimensions on the front view of this drawing. One is below the drawing, the other is a radius off to the right hand side. You can see that with these two dimensions you can't see the numbers, you can't see the arrowheads on the leader lines. They're totally incorrect. A lot of times students, not knowing better, will try to change everything individually inside the properties drop down window. That's the wrong thing to do. If we go into the annotate ribbon, which you guys can see I have that open here in AutoCAD, we can change the dimension styles so that when you start putting dimensions in, everything is set the way it needs to be set. So we're going to come to the dimensions panel. We're going to click the arrowhead in the lower right hand corner, and that opens up the Dimension Style Manager. We can actually create multiple dimension styles and basically just change those as we need to. However, that's rather impractical in most cases. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take the standard dimension style and we're going to come over to the right hand side, and you can see halfway down this column of buttons we have the modify button. So I'm going to do that. That opens up the Dimension Style Manager. Now we're going to start at the left hand side. We're going to work our way from left to right. Now you can go in and change things like arrowhead size, distance between the extension line and the part, distance between the other end of the extension line and the leader arrowhead, the spacing between the leader lines or the dimension lines and the dimension text itself, and the size of the dimension text. You can change all of that separately, but why would you want to do that when you can change everything all at once? Well, I'm going to show you how to go through and look at your dimension styles, make sure everything is the way you want it, and then use an overall scale factor to make these changes. First, under the Lines tab, there's not a whole lot here that I want you to be messing with. The baseline dimension here is 3/8 of an inch. That's what it's supposed to be. The extension distance beyond the dimension lines is supposed to be roughly 0.1875. That's what you have here on the right hand side. The offset from the origin is supposed to be 0.06 units. We'll leave that alone. We're not going to touch that. Let's take a look at the Symbols and Arrows tab. Now most of this comes out in a default setting exactly the way you want it, except for one thing. It will always put center marks here for radii and diameter dimensions. We're going to go ahead and draw center lines and such. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the center marks setting to none. That way we won't have center lines. Next, let's go to the Text tab. This is an area where you may need to sometimes make a little change. And the only little change you need to even think about making is here with the standard text height. Sometimes the default will give you a 0.18 text height. We work off of a text height of 0.125, roughly 1/8 of an inch. So if you go in and change if your AutoCAD says 0.18, you need to change it. If it says 0.12, you need to leave it alone. But anyway, this value right here for text height needs to say 0.12. I'm going to hopscotch over fit for just a second and go to primary units. When I do that, you'll notice that here we have a precision set of 2 decimal places. That means that anytime you put a dimension in place, it's going to put 2 values or 2 zeros to the right hand side of the decimal place. If you're in a metric system, most of your metric dimensions will be whole numbers. They will not have a decimal point. So if you click this drop down arrow to the right inside the precision box, if you click at the very top where you have a 0 and no decimal point, that will set all your dimensions so that you will not have a decimal and then decimal value readings. Now if you have to change that for 1 or 2 dimensions on your drawing, you can do that with the text editor. Last thing we're going to change here is going to be under fit. Now, if we think about it, everything inside of our dimension style manager is set on pretty much where inches would be. Now when we think about the metric system, we know that the conversion factor from inches to millimeters is 25.4. Now, if you think about the way you've set up your template or your layout, even though it's going to print and it would actually fit on 8.5 by 11 paper, the metric dimensions are saying that the length of this thing is 400 inches or 400 millimeters long and 277 millimeters tall. That's roughly 25 times the size of a layout for the inches measurement system. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave everything else alone, come over to the right hand side where it says scale for dimension features. We're going to make sure that the overall scale or use overall scale of button is checked, and we're going to change that value to 25. If you want to change it to 25.4, that's fine. That extra 0.4, nobody's going to be able to visibly see the difference there. I'm going to click OK here and close. Now when I do that, you'll notice here in my drawing, now you can see the dimension text. You can see the arrowheads. You can see the gap from the extension lines to the part. You can see the space from the end of the extension line back to the arrowheads. You see the gap here between the text and the dimension lines. All the settings are where they need to be. Another thing that sometimes is aggravating is newer versions of AutoCAD put this aggravating arc extension line in place. I wish they'd left that alone. Doesn't look good. Now I'm going to show you how to get rid of that. But when I make this change, it doesn't go back and fix this dimension like it did when I changed the dimension style. So I'm going to press the delete key and get rid of that dimension. Now I'm going to come down into the command line and I'm going to type the letters DIMTMOVE. There is no way to go into the dimension style manager and make this change. This is a command line change. So when you type that and you press enter, you'll see here in the command line it says enter new value for DMT move, and you see it says 0. I'm going to enter the number 1 and press enter. Now what this does is in the background it has changed the way dimension extension lines and leader lines work with the things you're dimensioning in your drawing. So now if I go to the radius dimension and I click on the radius, you'll see now that I have a leader line with my radius and I don't have that aggravating arced extension line. So if I zoom to extents now, you can see that I am now set up to dimension in the metric system. Now here's one of the things you can do. When you finish this drawing, you're going to do a save as, and you're going to save it as whatever the drawing name is. Then if you want to make sure that your template or your layout is set up for the next drawing you have to use that template for, All you have to do is go and do a crossing, delete everything off of the drawing, and then do a file, save as, and then come in here and find your your basic or your base template or your base layout, and then save it. That way when you open up your layout for the next drawing, everything's going to be set, including your Dimension Style Manager and your DMT Move setting, which keeps that awkward radius extension from importing itself into your drawing.